Hello, my wonderful friends. Sally the Seeker here. And I think things have been a little mixed up, but I appreciate those of you who are sticking with me. I'm going to continue to cover this Timothy Ferriter case because I really do think if you haven't gotten into it already, if you get into it, it will be hard to break away. And plus, his sentencing is coming up November 16th because Timothy has been convicted. And also, his wife, the mother, Tracy Ferriter, will be taking the stand, but they have not set a date yet for her. So I'm just going to go on and get with it. I'm going to pick up where I left off the last time. The last time, the prosecution had just finished questioning the witness, or we can say victim, as I said. And now Timothy Ferriter's lawyer, the defense attorney, is going to question the boy. So let's get on with it if I can make this work.
At your convenience.
Hi.
So we're gonna, I want to talk a little bit about what the state has said. I know you've been sitting there for a long time, so if you need a break, let me know, okay?
Alright.
Okay. So, do you think it's fair to say that you talked a lot about your time at Tim and Tracy's house on direct examination, right? Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay,
Sorry.
and nope, that's okay. Since we're recording, you do have to answer out loud, okay?
Okay.
So if I ever say if that's a yes, that just means I want to get it on the record, all right?
Alright.
Okay. Do you think it's fair to say that it's hard to think of the good memories because everyone around you now has a bad image of Tim and Tracy?
Overruled. You can answer.
We say that question again?
Sure. Do you think it's hard to think of good memories when everyone around you has a bad image of Tim and Tracy in their mind?
I can easily recall the good times, but not. I don't have a bad image of Tim and Tracy. They just made a mistake. They were just acting out of frantic surprise of my actions. They weren't. I believe that they weren't trying to do any harm.
Yeah.
I believe that people should recognize that that was a mistake and forgive them and move on.
Okay, I will not stop a lot. I'm going to try to get better about stopping, but like all I'm going to say is, with that little remark there, that response, my heart, that got to my heart. Let me know if it got to your heart.
I appreciate that, Ronan. I want to talk a little bit about the family schedules that you all had in your house, okay?
Alright.
So you have 3 brothers and sisters, right?
Yes. Sorry.
That's okay, right?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
And
Yes.
this is a little baby.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And right now he's probably about 2 or 3 years old.
I think he's either 4 or 5.
Okay. I'm sorry, I probably have the dates wrong. So obviously, when he was a baby, Tracy took care of him a lot, right?
Yes.
And Tracy was the one who normally stayed home.
Yes.
And Tim worked a lot.
Yes.
Was it fair to say that Tim was, for the most part, Tim was the one that was working and Tracy was the one who was at home?
Yes.
And Tim also traveled abroad a lot for work.
Yes.
So you also have Ma, who is the sporty one, is that fair to say?
Yes.
So she has softball, right?
Yes.
I think she played soccer too.
She played soccer in Florida before we moved to Arizona.
Oh, okay. But softball was her main thing.
Yes.
And she would have a lot of practices, right?
Yes.
You would go to some of those practices and would go to band.
Yes.
And she also, I think, did concert band, right?
Yes.
So there was marching band and concert band.
Yes.
And Tracy would be responsible for driving her around to this stuff as well.
Yes.
You had your activities. I know you.
Sorry. In case you haven't watched this and you didn't watch the first video, that is Tracy Ferriter, the mom, and the husband of Timothy Ferriter. Okay.
By track, right?
Yes.
I think in Florida you did chess for a little bit.
Yes.
So Tracy's kind of running around trying to keep everybody at their various activities. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. You did this with the state, but I want to establish a little bit of a clear timeline for the jury. So you were adopted in, I have the date in front of me, in 2009?
Yes.
Okay, great. So you're adopted in 2009, and then your family lives in Florida when you're a baby, right?
To be honest, we didn't. I don't know where I lived between in my younger years, because I can't remember because I was a toddler.
Fair enough.
But
will you take my word for it that for a couple years you?
Sustained.
You remember living in Arizona after that, right?
no, I remember living in Florida. Then I moved to Arizona. Then I moved back to Florida. That's
Okay.
all. That's all I remember.
Okay, so you're in Arizona from about you're about 11 or 12 all the way up to December of 2021. Is that right?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I think you were a little younger, but all the way up to December 2021, and then you moved to Florida, right?
Yeah.
And you ran away around end of January 2022? The most recent time.
Yes.
Okay. So the time frame we're talking about that you stayed in Florida most recently in Tim and Tracy's house was end of December 2021 to end of January 2022, right?
Sorry, I'm distracted. Say that again.
That's okay. When you all moved to Florida, the most recent time, it was about Christmas time, December 2021, all the way to end of January 2022 when you ran away,
Yes.
right? Okay. And when you moved, I assume there was no school because it was Christmas time.
Yes.
And your family was moving boxes, trying to get everything packed up, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then after that, you pretty much started school after the Christmas holiday.
Yes.
I want to talk about the different rooms that you had. We'll start with Arizona, okay?
All right.
So the first room you had, not the first room, but what the state was talking about was a room inside the house in Arizona that ultimately had a lock placed on it. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yes.
And that room had a lock placed on it while Tracy was pregnant with.
Yes.
That room had a window,
Yes.
it had a desk,
Yes.
it had a dresser, it had a bed,
Yes.
and it had a closet.
Yes.
And you said it also had a coffee table for you to play chess,
Yeah.
which you're still really good at, right? Okay. And that door was not always locked.
No.
There were times that you could move in and out for freely from that door.
Yes.
The next room is a week after this is born. About a week?
I think
I'm sorry,
a week
before.
Yeah.
Sorry, a week before X is born. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And that room was built in the garage.
Yes.
Now, you and the girls, by that I mean had previously, not this room, but used the garage to like watch movies and stuff, right?
Yes.
But this garage room was built specifically for you.
Yes.
And it had a bed,
Yes.
it had a desk,
Yes.
and it had a dresser.
Yes.
And you think it was about an 8x10 or 8x9 room as well.
Yes.
It also had stuff on the walls, right?
Yes.
I think you had like a periodic table on it. Is that a yes?
Yes.
But then sometimes you would get angry and rip that stuff off the walls, right?
Yes.
Tim and Tracy never took that stuff off the
No.
walls. And that room also was not always locked.
That room was always locked.
Okay.
Mhm.
So it's your testimony that at no point could you sort of move freely in and out of that room in Arizona.
I cannot. That door was always locked.
I believe him. Out of the mouth of babes.
Now I want to take you to the room in Florida, which was built in December of 2021, okay?
All right.
That was an 8x8 room, right?
Yes.
That room also had a bed, a desk, a dresser, right?
No dresser.
No dresser, I'm sorry, just a bed and a desk, right?
Yes.
And then the clothes you said would actually be kept outside the room.
Yes.
And part of that was because you would sometimes hide electronics in there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you have like ripped up your clothes before too?
I only done it once, and that was in Arizona, but I don't rip my clothes.
Okay.
But not on a regular basis.
All right, but sometimes when you get angry, or at least one time, you did rip up all your clothes.
Yeah.
And that bed, I know the state said you moved in December. In that Florida room, you were warm enough?
It's not that I was warm enough. It was that I was too warm.
Yeah.
And we had a fan. We put a fan in my room.
I see. So you had
Yeah.
you had sheets and a bed, right? Or like sheets and a pillow.
Yes.
And a blanket.
Sorry. Of course, he was warm enough. He was in Florida. It was that he was too freaking hot. Sorry, just had to add that. I do have to add something that's totally off topic, but she really does have very pretty hair. And I do like, even though she's the defense, I mean, she's pointing out things but I think she's doing well. I think she's trying to be sensitive of him. I'm just saying that because she has a partner that helps her, and I would just love to hear you all, all of y'all's opinion when you see him, because I have some opinions, but we shall go on.
Yes.
And then you also had the air conditioning unit installed there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Your Honor, can I approach?
You may. You approach me.
Oh, sorry. I meant the witness. I was wondering. I was like, why the background noise?
I didn't see anybody moving toward me, so I assumed you meant the witness.
I'm going to hand you. This is a little
The only time I see him smile is when his attorney says something. I guess he feels like that's friendly,
you know. That photo right there?
friendly people on his side.
Yes.
Is that a photo of you?
Yes.
And is that a photo of you in the room in Florida?
Yes.
And I think that's early on before you had some of the stuff removed from your room, right?
Yes.
And is that a fair and accurate depiction of, at least at one point, what that room looked like?
Yes.
At this time, defense moves to admit defense exhibit 15 into evidence, starting hallmarks identification.
Any objection? Court receives and accepts defense exhibit 15 in evidence without objection.
May I publish it to the jury?
You may.
So, Ronan, in this photo,
Ms. Murad, carry the mic when you're walking away.
I see that there's some posters on the wall there, too, and I know when the police came, they weren't there. When you got upset, did you rip up those posters, too?
Yes, ma'am.
Tim and Tracy didn't remove them?
Nope.
And sometimes, I know the state talked about how you weren't allowed to have electronics in your room. Those electronics were removed, right?
Yes.
And is that because of things that you did with electronics?
I didn't do all that. I did nothing wrong with it. Well, yeah, I did go into a bunch of schools, things, and do some not so legal stuff. And and I would factory reset school laptops and tablets.
Yeah, and so they would take away your electronics when you got in trouble with the school for kind of messing with their IT system, right?
Yeah.
And I know the state also talked to you about how you were only allowed that school laptop, right?
Yes.
But only to do homework, not to do games.
Yes.
But you also jailbroke that laptop, right?
Yes.
The first thing you said to this jury was that Tim and Tracy made a mistake based on trying to respond to your behavior, even if they didn't handle it correctly. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
So I want to talk a little bit about that behavior, okay?
Okay.
All right. So would you agree with me that sometimes when you get angry, you throw things,
Yes.
you kick things,
Yeah.
and you punch things?
No.
Do you remember giving a deposition in this case?
Approach.
I wonder if all of
All right,
these
so questions withdrawn.
people are
Objections
supporting the
moved.
Ferriters.
And when you were at Tim and Tracy's house, you would have outbursts, right?
Yes, but it would not cause physical harm to myself or others.
Okay, but it would include things like breaking glass.
I've never broken. No, well, I stepped on one of my picture frames because I was in a dark room, just feeling my way around. But yeah,
So are you saying you've never broken glass at their house before? Or that was the only time you broke glass?
yes,
Okay. Which one? That was the only time, or you've never broken glass?
I've the only time that I've broken glass is when I stepped on the picture frame.
Okay. And you'd agree that when you were at their house, you would rip things and throw things?
Yes,
And I think in your words, you intentionally broke the rules you knew about at least 5 times a week?
usually more, but yes.
Oh, bless his heart.
I want to start by talking about sort of before was born. Okay, so not your early young age, but from when you were about 10 years old. Okay.
Okay.
At that time, you were going to school, I think at Sunrise Elementary and Immaculate Heart. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay. At that time, you were having those outbursts we talked about at home.
Yes.
And if something happened at school, like some conduct at school, obviously your teachers were talking to Tim and Tracy, right?
Yes.
So then Tim and Tracy would find out and then they would react.
Yes.
And that would include discipline sometimes,
Yes.
right? At Sunrise Elementary School, do you remember punching a student? I know you were young.
Sustained.
Do you remember?
Well, let me have you approach it, unless you want to withdraw the question, Ms. Moran.
I believe the time frame is right.
So
Judge?
approach.
Imagine being in his place and thinking about your fate. I'd love to read everyone's mind in there. While they're conferring up there, I just want to share that sometimes I know that when I record this, it has a little shaky thing going on. Oops. Hey, this is like, it's almost, this is how it'd be if it was live, so we might as well just continue on, right? Anyhow, it has that kind of shaky thing. It's not coming from the video. I don't know if it's how I place the distance I place the camera, but I apologize for that. I'm always trying to fix that. I know it can be very aggravating, but the show must go on. Well, I didn't know it was going to take this long. But it's just good to actually read the face of the mom and the dad, Timothy and Tracy, and the other people as this goes on.
All right, so the objection's overruled. You may, do you still remember the question, sir?
I punched a kid.
You want to read?
Yeah. When you were at Sunrise Elementary, you were about 9 years old. Do you remember punching another student?
Do you have a name for that student?
I don't.
I don't recall punching a student.
That's okay. You did have some behavioral issues at Immaculate Heart too, right? Is that a yes?
Yes.
Do you remember kicking a ball at another student repeatedly?
Do you have a name for the student?
I don't.
I think I do, yes.
Do you remember putting your finger and thumb and pushing up on a boy's throat and pushing him up against the wall at Immaculate Heart?
Yes.
And there was some instances of stealing at Immaculate Heart?
Yes.
Okay. So after Immaculate Heart, this is born in February of 2017, right?
Yes.
So for a little while in there, you're still at Immaculate Heart, right?
Yes.
And you ended up getting a technology breach at school, right?
Yes.
Can you explain what happened
A technology.
at Immaculate Heart?
Can approach.
This kid is obviously highly intelligent. I'm not like applauding him that he, kind of broke into the computer system and did a, technology breach, but I'm not applauding him for that, but he's obviously very intelligent. So I wonder if that's the family's actual priest. How did it feel having your son, though adopted, you had him since he was a toddler, being up there testifying? I can't even, chatty they are. I don't know, I've just never seen, I guess because they're not career criminals. I'm going to have to probably keep using that word career criminal, that they can just all talk so freely. He can just lean back and talk, and I've never seen that. I mean, not that Darrell had anyone behind him that he could chat with, that's for sure. But it's definitely different. Pardon me as I move the camera. I know it can be aggravating, but hey, you know what? It's all right.
All right, so the objection is overruled in part and sustained in part, and you may proceed in accordance with the court's ruling. Ms. Moran.
Thank you. So when your parents found out about that technology breach that you had at Immaculate Heart, how did they respond?
Oh, hold on a second.
Honestly, I forgot.
That's okay. Is
Lauren,
it fair
can you hold
to...
on a second? Because I
Sure.
need to focus on you and him. That's why
That's
you
okay.
can't do it. All right, you may continue, Ms. Moran.
And so because of that technology breach, you were restricted from technology at home too, right?
Yes.
So you weren't allowed to have like iPads and stuff in your room, so that stuff had to be removed.
Yes.
I want to talk about something else that happened at Immaculate Heart that your parents did find out about. Do you remember going into your sister's class?
Yes.
Okay. So on that day, I think, tell me if I'm wrong, you were mad at,
Yes.
and you had pretended that a teacher told you that it was okay to, you went into his classroom, right?
Yes.
And her teacher was Miss McCoy, if you remember?
Yes.
And you told Miss McCoy that you were allowed to make an announcement, right?
Yes.
And the announcement that you made was really derogatory towards your sister,
Yes.
and it made your sister cry. And your parents found out about that.
Yep.
So your parents then, Tracy came with and Tim came with you, right?
Yes.
And they both came to the school,
Yes.
and you both spoke with the teacher separately, you with Tim and with Tracy.
Yes.
I think you brought a box cutter to school.
Yes, that was at Basis Charter Schools.
Oh, that was at Basis? How did your parents respond to that?
They locked me in my room.
But a box cutter is a dangerous thing, right?
It was more like a, it's a dangerous thing.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about Basis Academy and how your parents responded to some of the stuff there, okay?
Alright.
At Basis, you also attempted to hack into the school computers,
I did, yes.
and because of that, you had to get your technology removed again. You also said something in class that was inappropriate,
Yes.
and it was asking if the Holocaust is a good thing.
Sustained.
So after that inappropriate thing, your parents did find out about it, right?
Yes.
And they were mad,
Yes.
because that's not something you should say, right?
Yes.
At Basis Academy, you also stole chemistry books.
Yeah.
You stole a student's tablet.
No.
Did you steal a computer and a tablet? Maybe it didn't belong.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Okay. And did that belong to another student?
Yes.
Were your parents mad when that happened too?
Yes.
And did you get disciplined for that?
Yes.
So it looks like a couple times you're kind of doing things and you're just, regardless of what they're doing, you're not stopping. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
You did a search on that computer that you jailbroke at Basis.
I jailbroke what's it called again? A tablet, but not a computer.
Okay, so you jailbroke the tablet, right?
Yeah.
And then you did a search on there.
Yeah.
And that search was concerning to your mom and dad?
Yeah.
I won't talk about what the search is, but is it fair to say that it was something that it was understandably concerning to them because it sounded a little violent?
Yeah.
Do you remember playing with when you were in Arizona and him getting facial injuries?
Well, yeah.
And your parents tell you to stop and not go so fast?
Yeah.
But you still did it?
Yeah.
And that hurt. Did you remember him getting a lot of injuries on his face? It's okay. It's like a... Just wait a second.
All right, I think the emergency alert is over. You may continue, Ms. Moran. Well,
Sure.
not so quick.
We're still having an emergency.
All right, I think it's safe now, Ms. Moran, to continue. You may. Go ahead.
May I approach the
Yeah,
witness?
yeah.
Showing the
Yeah, I'd already said yes. You must not have heard me.
I'm showing you what I have marked as defense exhibit 16 for identification purposes only. That's photos.
Yes.
And is that what face looked like after he fell off that bike?
Yes.
Is that a fair and accurate indication of what his face looked like after he fell off the bike? Your Honor, at this time, the defense will proceed to move into evidence defense exhibit 16, striking all marks identified.
Any objection? Court receives and accepts Defense Exhibit 16 in evidence without objection.
So, it looks like he was a baby when this happened, right? Is that a yes?
Yes.
And he did really get hurt on his face?
Yes.
And this, is it fair to say this really concerned your parents? Is it fair to say anytime a baby gets hurt on their face, it's concerning?
Sustained as to that question, you can rephrase it in a way that's proper, Ms. Moran.
How did your parents respond when this happened to you? Were they mad at you?
Yeah.
And they did ask you not to push him so hard, right?
Yeah.
But you did it anyway?
Yeah.
While you were in Arizona, do you remember your friend?
Yes.
And you went to his house, right?
Yes.
And you pretended to tutor her, or were you actually tutoring her?
I actually tutored her.
Yeah. And you stole her dad's credit card,
I stole I just memorized the numbers. That's it.
and then you used his credit card?
Yeah.
And when your dad found out about that, he did sort of like grab you and get mad at you because of what you did, right?
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about Florida. You were only there for 6 weeks.
Yes.
Do you remember offering to beer?
Yeah.
Yeah. And was that so you could conduct an experiment?
Yes.
How old was it at the time?
It was 4.
4?
Yeah.
It's fair to say a 4-year-old should not be drinking beer, that could hurt them?
That was the point of the experiment.
I know. But that could hurt a 4-year-old, right?
It could.
And that's something that your parents found out about too?
Yeah.
And they got mad at you?
Yeah.
When you were at school in Florida, what school did you go to in Florida?
After I came back from Arizona,
Yes.
I went to Independence Middle School.
So when you were at Independence Middle School, you had an incident where you, pretended to be, you went into a classroom of a teacher, right?
Yeah.
A teacher that you don't know?
Yeah.
And that you pretended to be a member of the school board?
Yeah.
And you convinced that teacher that you were in fact a member of the school board?
Yeah.
And you told her that you were grading her that day?
I wouldn't say grading, but critiquing her.
Or evaluating her,
Evaluating,
right?
yeah.
And that's something, I mean, it looks like you're pretty good at kind of pretending sometimes and telling stories.
Sustain, rephrase.
Is that would you characterize yourself as someone who likes to pretend sometimes?
Yes.
And tell stories?
Yes.
And those stories can be really detailed?
Yes.
You like to add details to those stories?
Yes.
Do you think sometimes you have an impulse to tell stories and kind of make something up for people to believe?
Yes.
Overruled.
That's a yes?
You can answer. I think you did answer.
Yeah,
yes.
you did. Do you also have a method of picking sort of which adult is going to be easiest to influence for you?
All right, you need to approach on that. All right, the objection sustained. You may continue, Ms. Moran.
All right, Ronan, I want to talk a little bit about some of the, I'm not going to get into the specifics, but you remember that your parents did take you to doctors, right? Therapists, doctors.
It took me a couple of doctors, yes.
Yeah, so you went to a few different people, right?
Yes.
Probably on a weekly basis?
No.
Do you remember giving a deposition in this case? I was like in a room, I was there, Ms. Coakley was there.
At SP?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. And in that deposition, you said, it's not one of my top priorities, in reference to seeing doctors in Arizona, it's not one of my top Page 126, the deposition.
What's the legal basis of the objection, Ms. Coakley?
I guess, and in this case, the defense has to be very careful about what they say.
I need to address the objection. Are you making? All right, you may proceed, Ms. Moran.
Okay. So in that deposition, you said, it's not one of my top priorities to think about people that I meet like once a week. And that was in reference to seeing doctors in Arizona. Is that what you were asked, and is that what you said?
All right, you can sustain it that you can show him the question and the answer, and then ask him if that was his answer to the question.
So I want you to read page 126. It does require a little context, and then look up when you're done, okay? Okay, but that is what you said in that deposition, right?
Yeah, but
So does your answer yes stand? If it does, you need to proceed with the next question. This is impeachment. He's only supposed to read the question and the answer and just state what I'm just saying so he understands. So, sir, the question is simply, you've been presented with the question that was asked on deposition, and you've been presented with your answer. The only question you need to answer at this point is whether that was your answer at the time of the deposition. So what... Now, let me get the answer to this question. Was that your answer at the time of the deposition, sir?
yes.
All right, so you can approach now.
Thanks, George. All right. Now, we went through a lot of different things that happened in your, like with your behavior at school and at home, right?
Yep.
And your parents would always respond to that. Is that a yes?
Yes.
But you still didn't stop, right?
Yes.
So with the computers, you kept hacking into school computers, right?
Yes.
Sometimes you would continue to have outbursts, right?
Yes.
You would still rip down the stuff in your wall, right?
Yes.
You said in Arizona that you were spanked by Tim,
Yes.
correct? And you were never hit randomly, correct? It was always
Yes.
for a reason.
Yes.
Okay. So it was never just sort of him doing it to do it. It was always in response to sort of something that you did.
Yes.
And that didn't cause you any sort of permanent damage, disfigurement, anything like that. It was swelling that went away.
Yes.
Okay.
I want to talk about, the state mentioned the stuff about snacks. I want to talk about kind of what your life was like in Florida as far as that's concerned. So you got 3 meals a day, right?
Occasionally, yes.
In Florida?
Yes. Occasionally.
So it's your testimony that in Florida you didn't get breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
I occasionally got meals.
Okay. So we're going to go back to that deposition again, okay? So let me go grab it from my colleague. Your mom packs your lunch every day?
Ms. Murad, when you reach a good stopping off point, I want to take a 10-minute break for the jury.
You can take
Because
it right now.
we've been going about an hour and a half, so I want to give them a 10-minute break.
You can take a 10-minute break.
All right, so let's do that now, and then just hold your question. You can pick back up with it when we come back. All right, so court is going to take a recess. Now it's about 2:31. We'll break until 2:45.
Okay. I asked you earlier and you said that you did not get 3 meals a day in Florida, right?
I occasionally got it, but sometimes I didn't.
Okay. So may I approach, Judge? I'm referring to page 142 of the deposition, lines 5 through 17. I'm going to hand you a portion of your deposition. I want you to take a look at it, okay? And when you are done, please look up.
You were referring to...
It's about lines 5 through 5 through 17, I think. I'm sorry? 11 through 14.
Are you referring to Arizona or Florida?
Florida.
Florida, I got all 3 meals.
Okay. Thank you. So in Florida, your mom made you breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right?
Yes.
And for lunch, she would pack you lunch.
Yes.
You would get a water bottle. Like an empty water bottle that you could fill up at school.
I do recall having a water bottle at one point, but I think I lost it.
But she intended to give you the water bottle before you lost it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And you got a sandwich?
Yes.
Chips?
Occasionally, yes.
And a piece of fruit?
Yes.
You also, you mentioned that your mom got you bread with peanut butter and bananas for breakfast, right?
Yes.
At that time, you were vegetarian or vegan?
Pescatarian.
Pescatarian, okay. So you were getting like a pescatarian breakfast at the time?
Yeah.
We talked a little bit, or you talked in direct examination about sort of the snacks that you wanted, right?
Yes.
So do you recall going to a pediatrician and the pediatrician not, saying less sugar is way better for you?
I'm sorry, let her finish the question so I can then hear the objection. So I lost the question in the middle of the objection. So
Sorry
restate
for all the
question,
adjusting, guys.
And then make your objection and I'll rule.
Thank you. Do you recall a pediatrician telling you that, or your mom, that sugary snacks might be bad for you?
All right, sustain.
It goes to effect on the listener.
You can rephrase it in a way that doesn't require hearsay.
Okay,
I'm sustaining
so-
the objection.
Is it fair to say that in general, Tracy and Tim wouldn't allow treats and sugary snacks like that for any of the kids for the most part, right?
The girls got snacks like that, sugary snacks like that, but I didn't.
Okay, and they got it as treats, right?
What else would they get them as?
They had that as easy access. They could access it whenever they wanted. It wasn't necessarily incentive to get that, but it was. It could, if they wanted candy, it could spontaneously happen.
And you weren't allowed to have things like candy, Oreos, Funyuns. Those are the kind of snacks you wanted, right?
Yeah.
Okay. When
I would
they
too.
removed sugar from your diet, do you remember feeling a lot better and less hyper?
No.
Do you remember telling that to a doctor? A Dr. Martin?
Is he bald?
I don't know if Dr. Kathleen Martin is bald.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Oh my gosh.
Sorry, I don't remember.
Okay. Did it refresh your recollection to maybe look at that medical record?
Even his dad's smiling a little bit, but is that at him?
Yeah.
Okay, just give me one moment.
This is so sad, guys. I'm sorry. Whatever y'all think, and I shouldn't reach any conclusions, although they have, but it's so sad.
All right.
Your mom would do your laundry?
At a point where I would. We would alternate times doing laundries. Like, I would do the clothes, she would do the clothes, then the next day I would do the clothes. Yeah.
But, okay, so it was like a rotation of everyone doing laundry. Is that fair
Not
to say?
just me and my mom and occasionally.
Okay. So you, your mom, and I would sort of rotate who does the laundry.
Yes.
Fair? Okay,
Yes.
so that was a chore that everybody shared.
Not everybody.
Okay, that was a chore that the three of you shared.
Yes.
Okay. You stated in direct examination that sometimes well, let me put it this way. You said in Florida you got 3 meals a day. You'd never feel hungry, right?
I felt hungry, yeah.
Do you recall a conversation that you had with Detective Sharp?
Yeah.
Approach. All right, objection sustained. Rephrase.
In Florida, did you feel like you ate enough food?
Yes and no.
Okay. Do you remember, so your answer is yes and no?
I want to say I don't fully recall.
Okay. Would it refresh your recollection to look at a conversation that you had with a detective?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to direct you to page 71 of a transcript of your interview with Detective Sharp, and it's towards the bottom, okay? Let me know when you're done reading this. Please look up. Okay, now Detective Sharp interviewed you a couple days after you ran away from home, right?
Yeah.
And he asked about the home and asked if you got enough food to eat, right?
Yes.
And you said you did.
Yes.
That's what you told the detective?
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit about sometimes, I guess, kind of the way you feel or some of your actions in general. Is it fair to say that you get angry sometimes impulsively?
Yes.
Sustained.
Can I approach, Judge?
You can approach.
Now, this is really a lot different than if it were adult, but I would imagine when there's, sorry guys, I'm just trying to adjust this again. There we go. So very. So what do y'all think? How do you think Tracy's looking? Does she look like? Do you think she's sad? Sad because they were busted? She looks very frazzled and worried. So I suspect she should. I know a lot of people pointed out that they thought that she and Timothy, her husband, looked a lot alike. What do y'all think about that?
All right, the objection sustained. Ms. Murad, you may continue. You may.
All right, we're almost done. I know you've been up there a long time. Now, in Florida, you did, and even in Arizona, you said that door was not always locked, right? The door in the garage to Arizona. I'm sorry. In Florida, the door was not always locked, correct?
I think he said that. Could be wrong.
Yeah, the door was always locked.
In Florida?
Yes.
So there was a time when, for example, was walking into your door while you were playing Legos. Do you remember that?
No.
If the state admits ring video and it shows that, is it fair to say that that door was open at that time?
Yes.
If the video shows it was open?
I do not recall him walking into my room. I recall that in Arizona, but not in Florida.
Okay.
Okay, so vote. Who do you think has nicer
All
hair?
right, so you just testified that in Florida the door was always locked, right?
After we moved back.
Okay, so most recently in Florida, yes? State, I'm referring to pages 164, lines 25 to 165, line 1 and 2.
I was going to say, take a vote. Who do you think has nicer hair? Timothy Ferriter or Tracy?
You may.
So we talked about a deposition that you gave. You remember that, right?
Yes.
And that was, you don't have to say where, but it was in a little room, and I was there, Ms. Coakley was there, right?
Yes.
And you were under oath to tell the truth?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to hand you 2 pages of that deposition. I'm going to point you to the bottom of page 164, starting on line 17, all the way to 165, line 4. Can you take a look at that for me and look up when you're done?
All right.
After you looked at that, you were asked if that room in Florida was always locked. video of inside that room during the time that you were in Florida, they'll be able to see what happened in the room. That's fair to say, right? We talked about a lot of those behaviors. Is it fair to say that sometimes you can't control your impulses?
Sustained.
Is it fair to say that sometimes those things, those specific things that we talk about, they can cause harm to other people?
Sustained.
When you do something like ride a bike really quickly and your brother gets hurt in the face, that causes harm to him, right?
Yes.
Okay. And when you do something like hit another student, that causes harm to them, right?
I do not. What's your? Yeah, hitting a student causes harm, but I do not recall hitting a student.
Okay. You remember we were just talking and you said that you put your finger and your finger and your thumb on a student's throat at one time?
That was horse playing, and it was not intentional for them to be harmed.
Okay. But it is something that could hurt somebody, right?
Yes.
When Tim and Tracy would discipline you, it was always in response to something that you did.
Yes.
And sometimes it would also be in response to something that you did that could cause you harm.
Give me an example, please.
Do you remember almost starting an electrical fire in Arizona?
Like playing with the outlet? Yeah.
And that did almost cause an electrical fire?
No.
Okay.
They didn't. I know how to prevent one.
I'm sorry? Take your time.
Yeah, I remember playing with an outlet.
And that's something that could have hurt you?
Yes.
And it's something that could have hurt other people in the family, right?
Yes.
May I have one moment, Judge?
You may.
I apologize for all the moving around and adjusting. I'm just trying to give you all the best view possible.
All right, thank you, Ms. Murad. Redirect, Ms. Coakley.
That incident with playing with the outlet, was that in Arizona?
Yes.
Was that in the first room in Arizona inside the house?
Not.
So in the time frame in Arizona, were you doing that to try and get out of the room?
Not exactly. I was just trying to, I was a curious man at that age, so I didn't know what I was doing.
It's
Were
probably
you bored?
Yeah.
gonna
Did
say
not have a lot to do?
probably bored.
Overruled. You can answer.
Was there a lot of stuff to do in that room?
No.
Now, you talked about the situation that happened with Swimps fell off the bike.
Yeah.
Was that an intentional act by you
Nah, I was just playing too roughly.
with him? Was that in Arizona?
That was in Arizona, yes.
Okay, was it on a bike?
Yes.
And what were you doing?
I was pushing them around on the little tricycle.
Okay, so you're pushing your little brother on the tricycle?
Yeah.
Were you going kind of fast?
Yeah.
Was your little brother, what was his reaction while you were pushing
He
him?
was laughing, having some fun.
Okay, so were you having fun with your brother?
Yeah.
How did it happen that he fell and hit his face on after?
So I tripped on the flagstone. Then that trip pushed me a little too far, and the bike fell over in his face.
So was that an accident?
Yes.
Now, I want to talk about some of the incidents, some of the things that you have told us that you did. Let's talk for a second about Immaculate Heart. What grades were you in Immaculate Heart?
4th and 5th.
Okay, so you're in elementary school.
Yes.
So the incident that the defense asked you about that happened at Sunrise, that you say you don't remember, with the punching another child, Is that before Immaculate Heart?
Yes.
So you're like in 3rd grade?
Yes. Well, I was in Sunrise in 4th grade for, I'd say about, like around November.
Okay, so 4th grade.
Yeah.
4th grade is when so you're in elementary school when that happened?
Yeah.
And then the incident that we talked about with the pushing, you said it was rough horse playing with another kid with the hands on pressing against his neck. Is that also in elementary school when that happened?
Yes, that was in 5th grade.
In 5th grade, so you're like 11 years old?
Yes.
The incident where you went into class and made an announcement about, what grade are you in then?
5th grade.
So you're 11 years old?
Yeah.
Why were you mad at your sister?
Because I couldn't get the snacks that she wanted. Well, the full story is I couldn't share food, but I was able to share her food with others and get the snacks that she wants, and I wasn't allowed to do that.
And so did the fact that you and your sisters had different rules and abilities, is that something that caused you frustration?
Yes.
As a child?
Yes.
And at that point, in 5th grade, when you're 11 years old, are you already in the room in the garage before that happened?
No, I was.
Or are you not sure really when when the garage happened? In relation to the 5th grade?
In 5th grade, I was put in the box in 5th grade.
But you're not sure this was before or after?
That's the only time frame I can remember.
Okay. Now, they also asked you about some things that happened at basis, and they said a box cutter, and you started to say it wasn't really a box cutter. What was it?
It was a little scalpel. That's it.
A scalpel?
Yeah.
Like a little, you just had something that had a little sharpness to it?
Overall,
So something that had a little sharpness to it, it was small?
Yeah, it was just a tool with a serrated edge.
Did you bring that to threaten anyone?
No.
Did you bring that to hurt anyone?
No.
Did you threaten anyone with it?
No.
Did you just bring it to show people?
I was in 6th grade and hey, look, I found a cool tool in the toolbox.
At that point in 6th grade, are your parents already having you live in the structure in the garage?
Yes.
When that happened? Now, I want to talk for a second about some of the computer stuff.
Yeah.
Did you have an interest in electronics?
Yes.
Do you like to take things apart?
Yes.
Is that some of the times when you would take things, would you take them apart?
Yes.
Some of the devices? And then would you try and put them back together?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you mentioned, they mentioned like that at some point during your childhood in Arizona that you went to some doctor visits. That was something that Miss Murad asked you about. In your life, did your parents take you to the doctor?
Yes.
Okay. Did they take you to the doctor? Is your recollection in your childhood of going to the doctor every week?
Not every week, but at least before every school year. Do you mean like a pediatrician or like a psychiatrist?
Did they take you to sometimes like a therapist or a psychiatrist?
I remember seeing a therapist once or twice in Florida, but not.
I'm talking about Arizona.
Arizona, I don't think so.
Okay. Now, I want to talk to you a second about, they asked you about in Florida, did you sometimes break the rules?
Yes.
And you said that sometimes it could be as much as 5 times a week.
Yeah.
That you would break the rules.
Yeah.
When we're talking about breaking the rules, are you breaking the rules in a way that hurts the physical safety of anyone that you live with? Are you hurting anyone intentionally?
No.
Are you hurting yourself intentionally in Florida when you're breaking the rules?
Possibly.
Okay. Are you doing things like stealing candy?
Yeah.
Okay. And not talking to your parents when they want you to answer?
Yeah.
Doing things like having a bad attitude?
Yeah.
I missed the first objection. Was it? All right, I'm going to sustain that. Rephrase.
So when we're talking about breaking the rules that defense asked you about in Florida, the way that you're breaking the rules is not hurting any of your siblings intentionally, or is it hurting any of the siblings?
Sustain as to the original question, overruled as to the rephrased.
Is it hurting your siblings intentionally? We're talking about in Florida.
No.
Now, Ms. Murad asked you whether or not the punishments that your parents would do was in response to you breaking one of their rules. The type of punishment you got, did that punishment was that punishment traumatic for you? Or was being in that room?
It was unusual, but...
Was being in the room dehumanizing for you?
Yes, it was.
That's all the questions I have.
All right, let's just conclude this witness's testimony. Let me just take the video off for a second. All right, you can step down. Thank you for being here. Okay. All right, so he is not excused from the proceedings altogether. Okay.
Okay, guys, I think I'm going to close it for now. That was pretty long. That was we were able to get the boy or the victim's testimony and his direct and cross and redirect. And I don't know what this is, some commercial playing, but anyhow, that's okay. But the next thing we're going to focus on is the sister's testimony. So I'm going to let it go from here, and I hope you all enjoyed it. I know it's not really an enjoyable thing. Usually court cases are not enjoyable, but it's fascinating. And I'm already have questions about how come Wendy can be getting on laptops and phones. I didn't think that was allowed, but maybe the judge will get on to them about that. I don't know. So far, from what I've seen, I really like this judge. I think he's extremely fair. But anyhow, I won't babble on about what I suspect, like how come Wendy can be looking on computers and phones. I just didn't think they were allowed in the courtroom, but who knows. Anyhow, just a food for thought to maybe get y'all to come back here. But the next one will focus on the testimony of his sister. And if it's not too long, I'll add something else. But like I said, I'm trying to get this all completed before Timothy Ferriter's sentencing. So, as always, I love you guys. I appreciate you. And thank you so much for subscribing, watching, commenting. Don't forget, be kind to one another, be kind to you, and I'll see you the next time.